Ricky Flex, I'm about to throw it to you. Did this movie live up to your sky-high expectations as the number one fan in the Christopher Nolan fan club? Tell me.
Doctor, this movie, I had the highest of highs expectations for this. If I go back to Christopher Nolan, like Batman Begins, my expectations, I don't know, coming off of the 90s Batman Forever, a little nervous. And then like you go to Inception with Leo, it's like, my expectations were high, but like, we're still like no one's like sixth feature film or something like that, seventh, and non-Batman fifth. We're still working towards it, right? Interstellar, like McConaughey, like the McConaissance is kind of just getting underway. My expectations weren't super high, but they were high. This movie, though, was sky high. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, mixed with Christopher Nolan, atomic bomb, Christopher Nolan, visuals, story, like, yeah, the expectations were the highest of any Christopher Nolan movie that's ever been. That includes any Batman movie, any of the other films I mentioned, the highest expectations we've ever seen from Christopher Nolan for Oppenheimer. And I'm here to say it actually exceeded those expectations. This movie, for the third time on this podcast, I'll say it again, best movie of the year so far, Oppenheimer. Unbelievable movie. Gets better on the rewatch. The second time I watched it confirmed that. First time I saw it, I was like, probably Across the Spider-Verse, still better. But this second watch, like, hands are up. I got nothing else. It's Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, best picture in the lead right now. We'll see what Scorsese has to say later this year, but this looks like it's going to be nominated for like 12 plus Oscars.
So Ricky Flex, I think we benefited because we got to see this movie twice. Right? Like we went twice to theaters to go experience Oppenheimer. And the first time I saw it, I was blown away. I wrote down in my notes, very, 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 very good. Is it great though? And then I watched it in Dolby and I found the second viewing experience to be better than the first. This is exceptional. This is Nolan flipping what it means to make a historical biopic on its head. It was not the boring historical biopic you may assume, but it also subverted your expectations on what like the atomic bomb was going to look like in this movie. And I do want to preface this review by saying this is going to be spoilers. A lot of people have seen this movie. We're rocking spoilers right now. Okay, Ricky Flex, sound good?
I'm in.
Okay, you've been warned. I think this movie did an excellent job of misdirection with its promotion. You had no idea that this movie was going to be focusing, unless you knew the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, of like his communist ties, right? The investigation that the American government did on Oppenheimer. You thought watching the trailers of this, I can't wait to watch a bunch of atomic bombs explode. You think about Los Alamos. You think about, oh, what am I going to see like in Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki? I can't wait to see how it's portrayed. It did a lot of misdirection in that regard. It becomes, you basically only get one moment with the atomic bomb that lives up to the hype. And I love how it builds up to that suspense. He builds that suspense into that scene. But I love the Red Scare energy from this movie. And I think Nolan kind of learned from Interstellar, hey, this is a science-heavy movie, right? The dialogue of Interstellar sometimes takes people out of Interstellar. I thought the dialogue in this movie was very talky, right? Very dialogue heavy. But I was locked in when it's talking about who's a spy, who's not a spy, like Soviet ties. I thought that was exceptional. And for a movie that you think is going to have all these explosions and you actually are riveted and enthralled the entire way through from just the dialogue in a Christopher Nolan movie, that's how you know it's hitting. That's how you know it's hitting. This movie was exceptional. Cillian Murphy, we'll talk about him in a sec. What a perfect fit. What a perfect fit with what Nolan was trying to do. I can't imagine anyone else in the Nolan world who's worked with him before that was a better fit than Cillian Murphy. I also think it is the best movie of the year, Ricky Flicks. We are simpatico in that regard.
Wow. I didn't know if you would go that far. But like, just like think just to go back to the expectations for 1 second. Like you know that like when the review embargo got lifted and then the Rotten Tomato scores were coming in and then every single film page was posting the Christopher Nolan filmography with the Rotten Tomato scores and how good it is. Every single one except Tenet is critically acclaimed and even Tenet's at 69%, so it's not rotten. It's just like when you have that filmography and then you have this cast, the subject matter, the explosive nature of this movie with Christopher Nolan's reputation. It's like the expectations were crazy high, man. Like I don't know how like how you beat that. It's like really hard to even like
Nolan
acknowledge.
loves high stakes, man. He loves the highest stakes.
But like he's just even these interviews, which he doesn't want to do interviews outside of promotions. He never talks to the media ever. It's probably because he's probably dreaming or writing and dreaming about his next project and what he's going to write next. But you could tell like he's out of his comfort zone. He clearly doesn't like to do it, but he's still calm, cool, and collective at the end of the day because he knows how important this is, not just to his career, but to the movie industry, to this cast, RDJ. Like a lot of acknowledgments to his great work over the years, to RDJ specifically, Cillian Murphy. Like it is insane how this movie has exceeded the expectations that were laid out in front of him and how he stayed under this pressure and lived up to our expectations.
I thought Nolan was an absolute wizard in this movie, dude. An absolute wizard. Full command, every aspect of the movie. The IMAX camera, right? Zooming in. I thought it's kind of a questionable decision when you get like the number of atomic bombs that we do in this movie, or like when we're at Los Alamos, like the practice tests, and we only get the one. But like when it comes to using IMAX and trying to capture Oppenheimer, his feelings, what he's internalizing, god damn, it worked to me. It worked, and you see Cillian Murphy's like white beady eyes, just like screaming at you at the screen, the struggle that he's going through, the pain he's going through, or like his questioning of morality. I think that was an amazing decision. And then we're gonna talk about it. The editing of this movie was insane in terms of dialogue, trying to like capture that attention, right? Where you go from the three different time periods, right? Where you got the black and white back to color. It was seamless. And then it's kind of elevated and the stakes are elevated by this Ludwig Göransson score. It was like a conductor watching his orchestra at work. And then him gathering the performances from his cast that he got, aside from Cillian Murphy, holy shit. Like everything was operating at the highest level. This is one of my favorite Nolan movies. I have it at number 4 right now. That's open for fluctuation. But I thought he was just in full command. And that's why this viewing experience for Barbenheimer was so crazy, because you see two people just executing their visions, and you could tell there wasn't a lot of meddling in my eyes, right? Especially with Nolan. Like he got to execute exactly what he wanted to see. He's an absolute genius.
And another Nolan trope is usually like the twist, the psychological twist or the turn of the movie, right? And like there are aspects of that to this, but it's a biopic. It's not an original
There's
story.
facts, we know.
Yeah, so like we know what happens, but like no one's able to create the story to keep us on the edge of our seat. But at the same time, this movie, just like all Nolan movies, no matter the twists, like The Prestige, Inception, what happens at the end, they're so rewatchable because every little detail matters. Like I've always said about Christopher Nolan, every single word, every single thing in the frame has a meaning behind it. That's why I respect the hell out of this man. Everything matters. Like this one won't be at his most rewatchable movie, but this one is freaking rewatchable, and it at least on the second viewing, be even better on the second viewing. Like Doctor, like so, just for the audience here, after I saw Oppenheimer by myself on Thursday, we met up at Applebee's to get ready for Barbie. Dude, now you understand how hard it was for me not to say anything about this movie. Like I kept, I'll let you tell the audience how I was. Maybe I did reveal too much, but I was trying to keep it together. It was hard.
Yeah, this man was shaken. Ricky Flicks doesn't like to reveal stuff. Like Ricky does not like to talk about movies before we see them, after we see them. He likes to save it for the podcast. Like it's clear. Like I'll tell we'll be at like family dinner on Sunday night, and we'll be at the dinner table, and I'll tell our parents like, "Hey, this is what we're reviewing this week," and then they want to talk about it, or it's like we just finished viewing a movie and we're going to review it the next day, and they're like, "Okay, let's talk about it." And Ricky is just noticeably silent the entire time. I know he hates it, but I kind of do it to grind his gears sometimes. And I kind of like preview, like, hey, this is what I'm going to be talking about on the pod by talking about it at the dinner table. I forgot what I was going to say, but overall,
We were just talking about expectations, reactions. Nolan's a beast.
expectations. Yeah. Nolan's a beast. Oh, and you were talking about like rewatchability, right? And the idea of like details matter. And that's why the second time I watched it, there's so many different characters in Oppenheimer. And some that play very small roles, but integral roles. People like Florence Pugh. Like Florence Pugh is a character that I locked in on in her dialogue the second time I watched it. And I found out how important she was to this movie. She's not just someone to explore the morality of Oppenheimer or um how complex of a dude he is. Like what she says to him when she is bedside next to him, when Oppenheimer tells her that he's going to get married to Emily Blunt's character, and she says you can't trust that you shouldn't attack the people closest to you because they can make you pay for it in the future. And it's like lines like that I didn't catch the first time, but watching it the second time, I'm like, oh wow, that really does like enhance the character that Florence Pugh is playing. And then there's other moments where this is somewhat complex to follow the first time you're watching it. It's got the color to black and white, back to color, and it's got 3 different time strands. You don't have to worry about it as much the second time around. Like I found watching it again, I had a complete grasp on the story. And I could focus on the performances. I can focus on the dialogue. It was much easier to follow. I'm not saying it was hard, like terribly complicated the first time, but I had a more of an enjoyment the second time I watched it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, but also I think the biggest thing for me on the rewatch was more for the dialogue. There was so much talking, and it almost sometimes felt like a Sorkin script with how much talking there was at times.
Yes.
Well, obviously Sorkin's a lot sharper, but saying that, I also think because of the characters, they're all like geniuses. They're all scientists, right? And they all have an accent on them. They all have like different names that aren't as easy. Like Teller was probably the easiest one, or Oppenheimer. Then everyone else has like a name that's like hard to decipher, and you can't put a name to the face a lot. So when you see it a second time, it's like, oh, I got it. Borden. That's David Dalchemin's character.
Especially when they refer to them when they're not on screen.
Right,
That's where it was like,
exactly.
yeah.
So the second rewatch, I felt like it flowed for me incredibly well. Where the first time I was like Zach Galifianakis, like going through, like trying to calculate. All right, which face was he in the Impulsion team? Like I was
Exactly.
trying to figure out like who was who a little bit in the first watch. The second watch, I was like, I know who that is. I'm fine.
Yeah, so that helps it age. I think the more you see it, but Nolan, I wanted to bring it back to him and Killian before we jump into our awards. Nolan brought his blockbuster ability, his visuals that he brings to these movies, his practicality of effects, and I think that helped the dialogue in this movie, and it made the editing so awesome. Whether it's like Killian in dialogue with someone as Oppenheimer, and then all of a sudden there's this massive explosion that's happening in his head that he envisions, that he sees. And then it keeps the audience like, hey, wake up. Hey, wake up. Boom, boom, boom. Or it's like him dreaming in his bed, and you have like the quantum realm that's basically being shown with Saturns and balls and neutrons or electrons that are swirling back and forth, that is paired with a beautiful score from Göransson. And Göransson, dude, amazing work. I was always thinking like, why isn't Hans Zimmer doing this? Like we need Hans Zimmer to be paired with Nolan. But to hear Göransson be able to capture moments of wonder with him dreaming about the quantum realm, and then also the high stakes, like the time ticking and the intensity, almost a haunting type of score. I thought it was very diverse, played so well. But I bring it back to Nolan. I just think he found a way to do what he does best take away all the scientific jargon, make it more about communism, and then put an amazing score behind it with amazing visuals. I've never seen a biopic that has done this. It made it with the classically boring genre. He took hold of it and said, I'm going to put my own spin on it, which is what he does.
That's the most impressive part. Is this should be a boring movie, right? It should be boring. It should be hard to follow. It should be everything that you don't want to experience, really. You know, like as a non-linear story that makes it hard to follow too, with the black and white that's not appealing. And again, like the atomic bomb's it's a sensitive subject. You know, some people just don't want to see that again. Some people don't agree with it, you know, so they might not even want to see this movie. But again, like this type of movie should not be doing well at the box office. Barbenheimer, I do think has a part in the FOMO event. It has a major part in it, but still at the same time, it's Christopher Nolan. You just put your trust in this guy, and then this cast around it. This cast, just unbelievable cast to go along with the Christopher Nolan movie that around the Atomic Bomb is going to have is going to be pretty amazing in theaters. So, in all, like this movie, again, if you're still listening, if you haven't seen it, you have to go see it. I know we're about to jump deeper into deeper spoilers, but like if you haven't seen it, it's a must see.